All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar of Nozomi and Fortinet, hosted at Exclusive Networks. Let's first start with introducing ourselves. My name is Kim Dillian. I'm a security engineer here at Exclusive Networks, and I'm joined by Jeffrey Noya and Steven Motz. Jeffrey?
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Noya. I'm the regional system engineer for Nozomi Networks, covering Benelux and Nordics, responsible for all the customers in the region from a technical perspective.
I'm Steven de Mot, Business Development Manager for OT Security for Fortinet in Belgium and Luxembourg, responsible for end user contact as well as developing our partners and helping improve their OT capabilities.
This webinar is hosted at Exclusive Networks. I brought two of our vendors here with us. We brought Fortinet, we brought Nozomi Networks. If you ever want to see information about the vendors, you can contact them directly. You can contact us. We also have demos for the products. We also have integrations of those products. So always feel free to contact either the vendors themselves or contact Exclusive Networks. And then the floor is to the presenters.
Good. Skipping to next slide. Yes, no. Good. Okay, so a quick agenda. A quick reminder about, we presented a webinar last year. We'll go over quickly what was discussed there and give you access to it. And then I'll explain briefly the benefits of converging networking and security. Then we go to Jeffrey to explain wireless detection with the Guardian Air product. Then we move on to asset management combined with advanced analytics in our combined products in Vantage Cloud and FortiSIEM. And then we touch briefly on secure remote access as well. And then there's room for questions and answers, which is in the Q&A part of the webinar. So moving on. This is what we discussed last time. I think it was November. Yes, the 9th of November last year. You can see a link to the YouTube channel of Exclusive Networks, where it's always available. So what did we discuss? I think mostly what you see on the top right is how our products can help achieve compliance with IEC 62443. So we explained a couple of the foundational requirements, how you can tackle them, and then
also what we showed is how, from a visibility perspective, Nozomi can see new assets, detect things happening on the network, and via the integrations with the FortiGate, leverage how we can cooperate and do automated remediation, for example, and really show the power throughout the whole stack of Fortinet and Nozomi.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're interested in that, feel free to go and have it. So onto the networking and security convergence. So I think it's a really important topic, specifically since we're talking about OT environments, we're talking about headless devices, we're talking about agentless devices. That's really important. So how do you approach cybersecurity in this kind of environments? You do it from a networking perspective as a basis, I guess. There's certainly room for endpoints as well, but the foundation of securing networks like this will always be the networking perspective. So how do we tackle that from a Fortinet perspective? It fits really well into what we've been doing already for years and years, of course. So on the left, you see all of these agentless, headless devices in different types of environments. Could be manufacturing. We also see a lot of interesting smart cities, smart building projects happening. So there's a lot really going on. They are all connected through networks, could be cable networking, could be Wi-Fi networking. We go a bit deeper into that later on. And the way we approach it is really by placing our operating system centrally in all of these devices. And so we have switches, we have Wi-Fi access points, we have next generation firewalls, which include SD-WAN functionality. So all of this combined, all of these products, they are built on top of the same operating system, which means that all of the security capabilities are also integrated in all of these products. And they are not purely networking product. Every Fortinet product is always a security product. That's the foundation of what we do. So even if they are basically connectivity, networking products, they will always have security built in. And how does that translate into OT-specific devices? So that's what I wanted to highlight here. It's an overview of what we have in terms of ruggedized devices. And I think the top left, that's probably the most interesting device that we have. It's the FGR70F. That's our ruggedized 70F firewall, which is DIN rail mountable. It has loads of certifications to be used in specific environments. For example, certifications for maritime, certifications for specific, let's say, verticals. And so it's, yeah, as I said, it's DIN rail mountable. It has digital input-output ports, so it can even communicate with the physical world with sensors and keys and maybe traffic light signals, these kind of things. They are all available inside this product. And recently, we also announced a 5G version of this product, so it can be also used in remote environments where you want to have the 5G connectivity directly on the device. And then there's loads of other things. There's our switching portfolio. We currently have a 12 and a 24 port switch. More is coming. No commitments, but more is definitely coming. We have a ruggedized access point as well, which can be used indoor and outdoor and in dangerous environments. There's also extenders. So extenders basically extend the capabilities of a FortiGate where it's connected to. So it can give you 4G or 5G capabilities when you connect it into a FortiGate device. FortiDeceptor, we talked about that in our last webinar, so I won't reiterate, just showing here that we have it also in a ruggedized version. Sorry, skipping on the wrong device. Thanks, Jeffrey. So what does it bring you in terms of secure networking? The benefits for me, it's I've managed networking devices in the past as well. And when I see this screenshot, it always makes me wonder what I could have had in the past. So what it gives you is really visibility. When do you need this? When you have an incident, when you need to quickly know what's going on, how things are interconnected to each other. That's where I see the big benefit of having everything in one ecosystem. It's being able to see how your network is organized, where the problem might be, and which device is behind which switch or access point or next-gen firewall. That's really, for me, the strength of having everything in a central ecosystem. And of course, on top of that, I already mentioned our devices. They aren't just networking devices. We also, at every point here in the network, we are able to add our security layer on top of that. And the image that I'm showing here, it's our virtual patching view. So what we do there in virtual patching basically means having the knowledge of the devices that are inside your network and also the vulnerabilities that exist for those devices and bringing that information together. It's applying the needed preventions for vulnerabilities, so the catching the vulnerabilities on a network level. And that's what we are trying to do with our virtual patching. And of course, we can apply this on all of the points here where the network is touched.
So then the interesting thing is we go from the physical cabling or to the wireless that's being monitored or seen by the 40 access points. Yeah, we go to the Nozomi Guardian Air. And that essentially gives more features and functionality and visibility into what's going on around in the environment. It may be a manufacturing plant, it may be a ship, it may be a whole kind of different environment than you can imagine now, where wireless connectivity is not only Wi-Fi. Wireless is much more. The whole spectrum of wireless is very interesting to monitor to see what's going on. And what do you want to do when you have a manufacturing plant with intellectual property? You want to make sure that I want to detect rogue devices that are here. Rogue devices can be the people that are walking into your plant, but can also be, for example, drones flying over and detecting drones and see what's going on there. So the Nozomi Guardian Air can help you with that and much more, because we can give you visibility. We monitor the wireless spectrum. So we listen to different types of wireless radios, which I show in the next slide, and then make sure that we can triangulate, identify devices there, so you at least have an idea of what's going on, but also detect rogue SSIDs and so forth. Why is this important? Because nowadays, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are very common, but other technologies are emerging as well, or used more and more. What you saw at a few slides back from Steven is that the wireless technology is the 4G, 5G, 3G, but also, for example, GPS positioning can be leveraged, LoRaWAN, which is being used more and more, Z-Wave, and cellular, of course. And why is this important? Because you want to detect what's being used, how it's being used. You want to see how busy the wireless spectrum is in the specific environment to detect issues, but also detect if there are interferences. And because you have an appliance, the Guardian Air, which can monitor all of those spectrums, you can identify where potential issues might be, but also identify information of those assets. And what does that mean? In this overview, you get a quick view of what we can see from the wireless capabilities with our sensor. So ranging from Wi-Fi, where we can see maybe the product name, maybe the vendor, to also Z-Wave, which is less common, of course, but a lot of times used by IoT devices. Drones with a specific drone identification. Cellular, which tower does the cellular information emit. But also other things. And all of those things give you a better view of what's going on, but also look at a vertical which is very sensitive with data, like a medical environment, where a lot of devices that are being brought in by the vendors, like the ones that make the Röntgen devices or the X-ray devices and all of the scanners, typically have some connectivity which is enabled by default, and maybe it's not configured or secured. You want to see what's beaconing and what's advertising in the network. What's important about the wireless technology in general is a lot of people have it, but are not aware of the potential risks and the potential exposure you have with it. And I think that's very important. And if you look at wireless, that's a very important space that's growing more and more, because we tend to let go of wires. We want to be flexible in the way we move with the 4G, with the 5G. So that's moving. Next to this, and of course very important, we monitor the wireless spectrum. The wireless spectrum is there, but it's also important to monitor connections to your network and from your network. And I think that's something that we as Nozomi, we cannot do that. We can monitor the connections that are coming in, but it's important to streamline the communications, and that's where Fortinet can really help again with access control.
Yeah, indeed, it's a complementary control that we can provide. And I think, as Jeffrey correctly said, we all started with networked with cabled networking. Wireless is coming more and more, but of course there's the rest of the world, let's say. There's connectivity from everywhere, and that's really where we want to step in as well with this new product that's been very recently announced, actually, FortiSRA. It built on top of what we've already been doing with our FortiPAM product, Privileged Access Management. So basically what it is, it's a product that provides agentless access to your third parties who need to access your trusted network. It puts basically a gateway in between where you can be monitoring these devices and where you can do recording of sessions, you can transfer files in a secure manner. And that's the product that's been recently announced, and it will become available in the course of Q3 this year. So yeah, very much new and exciting product, and it solves really a very important connectivity use case that can bring everything together. So back to you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, And what's also important, what we see and what's changing in the market is that a lot of times in the old world, if I may call it like that, people didn't like to be connected in the OT space. But what you tend to see is that connectivity is more and more required and more needed to work with. And also, there are a lot of benefits when you can work connected. Now, we have a SaaS platform that's called Nozomi Networks Vantage, where in Vantage we can connect our sensors to a central cloud portal. And the big advantage you have with that is that you can have one place, one single pane of glass where you can view your assets, have the insight in the risk, but also have one point of licensing for all of your sensors. It keeps everything central. So continuous monitoring, vulnerability assessments, and use the cloud enrichment technologies we have in the Vantage platform to make sure that we can identify assets better, where we can give them more context by looking at the metadata and comparing it and enriching it without touching the source data itself. The important thing that I want to emphasize is that we, as Nozomi, we come from the OT world, so we are really in the air-gapped environments and also in the hybrid and the cloud-connected worlds. Important for us is to emphasize, if you lose your connectivity to our cloud portal, your day-to-day business will go and continue as usual. You just lose some enrichment information until the connection is back. We don't have a dependency to be connected 24/7. And that's very important to understand, because often the case, a lot of connectivity is not taken for granted at specific locations. You cannot take that for granted, because there are sites which still work with very small bandwidth or very bad connections. So keep in mind, our Nozomi Vantage can really work with all of those complex situations to make sure that we enrich it and aggregate the data. What Vantage also does, we have an option for something called IQ, and I only briefly touch upon it here. That's an add-on to Vantage, where we can automatically create from information insights. So where we correlate, for example, alerts, vulnerabilities, risky assets, and show them in patterns, so you can easily digest what's relevant now to work on. So for example, you see an information breach where we see that multiple endpoints are connecting to a specific IP. We see that a vulnerable asset with specific alerts, things are correlated and show, hey, this is a high risk, high priority now to tackle, because these weaknesses are there. But also looking at things that you can improve in general. We see TCP flooding, issues on the network. We see the sensors not placed correctly. So IQ can really help you making your work and life better with aggregating data, correlating it for you, and showing you only things that are relevant to work on. Also very interesting is, of course, the ChatGPT version, what we have in our tooling. With our tooling, you can retrieve information from our tool via queries. We have dashboards, we have reports, but also queries. And queries are very powerful to work with. Queries are not always that easy to write. So that's why we also, with Vantage IQ, introduced IQ Assistant, where you can ask a question. For example, show me vulnerable assets, or show me assets from a vendor XYZ, or show me, for example, alerts in this time period, and it will generate query for you, so you get the results. And if you want to, you can alter the query with different parameters, but we do the heavy lifting. You only have to tweak if something is relevant for you. Also important, we have the functionality that you can speak to the query language. So you can ChatGPT like bot, so where you can ask a question via speech and we translate it for you. About Vantage again, Vantage is for us really a way of introducing new features, new functionalities and insights for you as a customer, because we can leverage the power of the cloud. And one of those really interesting things is customizable dashboards. And what I show you here is an overview of a customizable dashboard, where we just show you high level how many alerts have been seen for the last month, how many assets have been seen in the specific IoT OT environment, which are end of sale, but also interesting, are the links from external to internal, are the communication from the internet to the internal segment. Very interesting to see that in an overview, which can then be tuned to your needs when and if necessary. Important to emphasize is the 325 number. I've seen almost 400 assets in this data set. 325 have been actively enriched via Vantage asset enrichment. What does that mean? All the data that has been gathered passively from the network has been gathered, analyzed, metadata has been sent upstream to Vantage, and Vantage then saw, based on the maybe limited information we saw, but we saw MAC addresses, specific traffic flows, some patterns, we could enrich it via the cloud metadata, API backend integrations with some vendors, and so forth, to show this is a controller with this type, and so forth. So really using the power of the cloud, which a static signature, of course, cannot do. Here's an example of an asset card which we show in Vantage, where we help you in showing you all the relevant information, the sect, what's in the packages, but also adding pictures of the assets. And why is it important? Because often the people that are operating on the SOC or operating behind the Vantage portal are not the people that are in the plant. So how are you translating what you are seeing without a picture to the one that you are speaking to on the phone that needs to remediate? By showing the device itself, so you can understand this is how it should look like, can share that information, so you can really work efficiently in what's going on. Also, the level of information that you can retrieve is really deep. It goes to slots and racks populated, to even is the CPU stopped or started from a specific device, and a serial number of, for example, a memory card. So really enriched information that we can provide you with. Also, with the customizable dashboards, there's a possibility to do prioritization with, for example, vulnerabilities. We can show you all the vulnerabilities seen, over 11,000, but what's relevant for you? We want to look at, for example, the IoT specific vulnerabilities, which is often a limited subset of assets, and you want to see which assets are vulnerable. And if you look at, for example, all the parameters tweaked, at the lowest bar you see most vulnerable assets with CISA-CAF, so key exploited vulnerabilities, and the EPSS score is reduced to only 4, where you see that if you address those 4 assets, which are engineering workstations or servers in this case, you really improve your security posture. Or like Fortinet says, your security rating goes up. So really showing you the data to be relevant. So the middle bar shows the specific assets. The right one shows you the specific zones in which the assets are. So also to have a better idea, is this relevant for me or not? Is this in scope or not? All of this data that we gather is being correlated in the Vantage IQ, what I told. This is again a screenshot of what Vantage IQ can do, showing you what's relevant, risky protocols, vulnerable assets, our sensors are still reporting in, are there other things occurring, and really helping you transforming the information to a next level into the insights that we can provide you here. And this is OT, IoT, but IT we can also, of course, give insight, because a lot of IT components are in the OT space. If I look at an alert, what we can get, for example, our alerts can be security and operational by nature. In this case, it's an engineering workstation where we see that somebody is doing a program upload or download. And we map it to MITRE ATT&CK for ICS or enterprise, depending on the type of alert we have. Important is you get visibility in what's going on. You want to see, are my program transfers occurring in the maintenance windows that we described and agreed upon? Is something happening out of those times? Or are, for example, bad actors trying to do something on my network, trying to transfer something on my network, to really identify what's going on here. Important to see is we cooperate really well at Nozomi and Fortinet. This data that we gather, we can feed this enriched information into the security fabric. We discussed the last time the FortiGate integration, but we can also do integration with FortiNAC or with FortiSIEM, for example, where we can send the information that we have, audit alerts, health alerts, alert information in general, more information, and integrate with FortiSIEM to use that as a single point, as a SOC for your environment, to also show all the relevant information there, to not have 2 dashboards to look at, but 1 to aggregate.
And that's exactly what we see here. And so this is where all of the, so first of all, the SIEM acronym, Security, Information and Event Management. So that means it's the place where everything comes together. Your information, your events from different products. We talked now about an integration with Nozomi, but of course we could be integrating with any security product that you have in your environment. We could be pulling in logs from any device. We could be pulling in firewall data, could be EDR data, could come from anywhere basically. And this is a SIEM is a place where you can really build your CMDB, your configuration management database. So where all your assets end up across your entire organization. Of course, it's up to you if you're going to do this between IT and OT, or if you decide to just set this up for an OT environment. That's more of a case-by-case decision, I guess. But so what's the integration here? We heard about a lot of interesting asset enrichment that's happening on the Nozomi side. We ingest that enriched data, and you can see it here on the screenshot on the method column. It's actually the data that you see here, the assets, they are coming from the Nozomi API integration. So we integrate the asset information, but also the threat intel and the detection information. So the enrichment on the level of the security part of the integration, that's also happening. So we are pulling in the asset information and the security data and then correlating it with what we already have from all of the other systems. So what does this bring for you as a customer? It's an overview of all of the assets that you have and all of the events that come with it. And then the next step is something you can do inside your SIEM. You can actually also do it in your FortiAnalyzer and your FortiGate, but we showed you that last time. In SIEM, you can divide all of these devices in the different levels of the Purdue model. And this gives you a very good overview of where your assets are and which kind of events are happening on which level of the Purdue model. So this is something that you can model yourself, or it's data that we can also ingest from other devices, such as our own integrations, as I said, with FortiGate and FortiAnalyzer. So that's an important view, I think, that you can have this overview based on the project levels. And then that was let's say, more of the asset management, the CMDB part of what FortiSIEM can offer. Of course, FortiSIEM in itself, I think we could talk about it for a full webinar. What I want to highlight here is the MITRE ATT&CK capabilities, and more specifically, MITRE ATT&CK for ICS, when it comes to OT environments. So what is MITRE ATT&CK framework? It's an overview of every type of, not indicators of compromise, but more like all of the tactics and techniques that attackers use during an attack. And that's the overview of the slightly cluttered screenshot that we see on the right side. So basically, it's a full mapping of how an attack takes place, from initial access to persistence to escalation to evasion techniques. All of these techniques are basically put into a framework which is called MITRE ATT&CK. So what do we do with our SIEM product? We can show you the coverage, and this means which of these techniques do I have a product for? Which covers that technique, which can prevent from it, and how are they configured? If it's a Fortinet product, we can also see inside the configuration, of course. So there we can then see, is this technique really configured? Is the configuration activated? And that's the overview that you get here. On the screenshot, there's 100% technique coverage. So somebody's been doing really well in configuring a lot of security products and configurations. So this shows you that you have everything covered in this framework. There's another aspect to it as well, and that's the event part. And we are mapping the events on this same framework. And that as a benefit, again, as Jeffrey explained, is the idea is not that you have to go through millions and millions of logs, as you maybe imagine a SIEM looks like. What we try to do is filter down these logs into a funnel, and the funnel in this case is the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So we all of these events, we map them to a specific part of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and then you can see in which stage of an attack the finding has taken place, and you can then go back to your coverage to see, am I missing something in my configuration? How did this happen? And how can I remediate? And then on the bottom left, same story basically. Gen AI, it's also a hot topic at Fortinet at the moment. A lot of buzz around it. We have integrated in FortiSIEM, we have a Gen AI powered chatbot basically where you can do the same things, and you can ask, give me a full report of all the critical incidents in the last 30 days. And for this specific incident, give me all of the indicators of compromise. This kind of question that indeed would have required a manually created query in the past, you can now do it in an automated way with this Gen AI integration in FortiSIEM. And I guess this is an overview. We also showed this last time. There's a lot of integration options between Fortinet and Nozomi. As you can see here, we talked about FortiGate last time, we talked about NAC a little bit, and we covered the other topics here today. Yeah, I guess, do you have anything to add to this, Jeff?
Yeah, the most important is that working together is the only way to make sure that you get safe as a customer or a partner managing a service for a customer. So working with solutions that integrate really well. And what you see is the automated remediation is typically something that's being done when you're already a bit more down the road with for example, tuning the devices. But what's really interesting to get insights, if you have a tool like the Nozomi, and then you use for example, the FortiNAC, why wouldn't you integrate them? Because if you can leverage our best of breed deep packet inspection and asset information, we can send that to FortiNAC where we done the heavy lifting, and they can piggyback on the integration by pulling it via the API and seeing really relevant context of an asset to make sure they can profile, identify better. Why wouldn't you do it? Because it gives you so much more insights. And in general, if you see Nozomi sending logs to the FortiSIEM, all our logs are being parsed, so that makes sure that you have a solution that knows each other's language, and that always helps in simplifying always the complex day-to-day business, because we tend to lose a lot of time with, oh, how does this work? How does this work? I need to look there, I need to look there. Looking and consolidating solutions into one dashboard or maybe two dashboards if it's needed, to make sure that integrations are leveraged, data aggregation is being done, is really important for you as a customer and a partner, because then you can work really efficient in streamlining security and communications in the network.
Yeah. And the remediation part, maybe it's important to highlight that it's not necessarily an automatic remediation. And there's always the option, of course, to do it with a manual, let's say, approval step in between, because you don't always want to be doing automatic remediation in environments like this. No. What we do is we talk to each other. So your part of the remediation is just activating the remediation instead of having to think about it and configure it and doing the technical details of it. It's just the action I approve or not. And that's really the difference, I think. And then to conclude, we want to invite you to two of our events are already happening very soon. The Fortinet Security Day, that's our large event in Belgium, where we bring all of our end customers together on the same day. So this is really an event for end users. The partners think that's the day after, that's specifically for our partners. And on the Security Day, Nozomi is a title sponsor this year, for which we thank you a lot. So we will also be physically present there, both of us. So if you want to discuss a bit deeper about what we have discussed here today, that's the place to do. And that's it, I guess. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, I don't know, Mr. Moderator, have we received something?
At the moment, there are no questions.
No? Okay.
So we've got 5 minutes more for Q&A. So if there's any question, feel free to ask them.
Yeah, and of course, you've got our contact details. If there aren't any questions right now, you can definitely share them with all of us, and we can take the responses offline, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, and I think this webinar is being recorded, so we can share afterwards also a link to people that want to show it later, or want to view it later.
Okay. Good.
If there are no more questions, then I think this will conclude the webinar for now. Like both gentlemen said before, if there are any questions, feel free to reach out. If you got questions later on, just send an email, send a text, and we will get back to you on those questions. And I also want to thank everyone for joining, and come meet us at events. Always welcome to join.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.